What is up, my fellow Twelvians? I am Logan, the Totally Epic Gamer, and today we're going to be going over an even better Tool of Destruction build than I've shown before. Let's get into it. So, moving right into the class tree, there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot of different options. You can do a lot of things with this build, and I'm going to show you a few of the options you can take and why I chose the ones that I did. So, starting right off, getting anomaly power, obvious reason. Taking resistance piercing over cooldown reduction, mainly because you're not going to need too much cooldown reduction because we're going to be focusing on it on our inventory slots. Here, anomaly power, 6% of course. Brain freeze, which is going to be very critical. This is going to be used for our reloads as well as our ability to inflict status so that we can use our multipliers from the mods we're going to have on our gear. Here, we're going to take resistance because the other alternative is based on reloads, which we will not be doing. Anomaly power, which is good. This additional 30% anomaly power whenever you throw it on the turret. The turret has a 5-second cooldown, 30% always uptime. Cooldown reduction, 15%. Taking it over the toxic afflicted lasts for 30% longer. We don't really need it to last longer than it does, and that's kind of why we take this cooldown reduction here. And we need resistance piercing better than we need cooldown, which is why we didn't take it here. Moving on, we're grabbing anomaly power. Anomaly power, resistance piercing, because of course resistance piercing is always good. Anomaly power. Grabbing this only because it's on the tree. You don't really need 10% less damage to at least for you and your teammates, but oh, hey, it's always good. Anomaly power, and finally finishing off, every time we throw down Scrapnel, we'll get 50% additional anomaly power. Very, very strong. Scrapnel has a 12-second cooldown, so almost 100% uptime. Now, why didn't we take some of these other mods? We do not need more skill life leech. I'm telling you, you will have enough skill life leech based on your inventory. Here, we don't need more skill life leech, and here, we don't really need the additional armor. It's 50% additional armor, which ends up equating to about 25k armor. You don't really need it because the things you can get are a lot more damage by going up here into this tree. So we get 10% max health, 20% resistance, 10% max health, and then we get the vulnerability from the toxin. Now this meshes really, really well when we apply toxic with our melee skill. And of course, your melee skill is based on your anomaly power in the first place. So all of this couples together really well to apply freeze, toxic, and greater vulnerability on somebody every time we melee somebody. And since enemies are running up to us, it is not difficult to get. You're almost indestructible while the minigun's out, and by using your melee, you will do a huge amount of damage to literally everybody. So that's why we chose those options. Now, here you see I took Marked for Execution, which is a pretty much flat 6% damage increase on anybody that's afflicted with vulnerability. Now that's fantastic. Why didn't I take Wipeout though? And the main reason is because a lot of enemies will die before they're even at that minus 30% health threshold, although they do equate to about the same amount of damage. 30% of 20% is about 6%, and this is about 6% as well. The difference being Marked for Execution is always active when I have a toxic on, which is fairly often, and this is only active when they're at a certain health requirement. I think this is just easier to achieve and it's more consistent, so I took it. But of course, this would add a lot more high damage numbers at the end of each elite kill, and this just adds a lot more consistent damage. So I took this just over this, but you're open to do both, that's for sure. Now, the other option is 20% resistance piercing and 10% max health. Those are flat rates. I really like flat rates. I'm not a huge fan of something that's correlated to, having to proc something. It's always better if it can be flat. You can get 40% damage mitigation right here, which is excellent. And we are using our class melee skill a lot. Now, I liked this more personally because I think the flat is better, but if you come up through this tree instead, it is for sure understandable because this melee skill is fantastic. 40% damage mitigation for 3 seconds. You are using your melee fairly often. You're already a tank, but you could become even more of a tank. So that's pretty much the breakdown of the skill tree here. Moving into the skills, we're taking Blighted Turret. That's for the 30% anomaly power increase uptime is 100%. So you're always going to be able to throw this down. Plus it applies toxic, which makes it good for doing vulnerability and getting our toxic lead reload, which I'll be showing for part of our mods. For Scrapnel, of course, gives us 50% extra damage, or 50% extra anomaly power, which ends up equating to damage, and it does some decent AoE, and it causes an interrupt. Usually we're within distance to do a melee skill, which causes an interrupt anyway, so really we're just taking it for that 50% additional anomaly power. And of course, Tool of Destruction, because that's the name of the build. We absolutely need it. It does all of our damage, and with the mods that we're going to be applying, it will do a huge amount of damage. So now let's move on to the inventory. First and foremost, for weapons, it doesn't really matter what you have. You just need the 2 slots, status power and skill life leech. You don't absolutely need them, but they're helpful. It's the only 2 ways that can actually help you. There's no other mods that really help you. You know, long range damage, crit damage, close range damage, armor pierce, they're not going to help you. Now, if that top line could be resistance piercing, we'd take it, but it can't be. So we just move on and take status power and skill life leech. Additionally, from there, the only mod that's going to help you is Fortress. So we apply Fortress. Perpetual Immobile doesn't work anymore, so there's no need to look around for that perfect gun. You really just need Fortress, which you can put on any gun. So what you're really looking for is status power, skill life leech on a weapon. Boom, you're done. You have the weapon you need, because we'll be using the minigun. Now, moving on to our armor, which is much more important. I'm taking Grim Inventor's Mask. It's not really required that you get the Grim Inventor's Mask, but it does come with the exact right attributes: anomaly power, skill life leech, and cooldown reduction. And now when I was saying you don't need skill life leech, here's why. We're already at 9% skill life leech, and we're at 2 items. As you can see here, we're at 37.5% skill life leech. You don't need any more. That's why I don't take any of it from the skill tree. Your minigun will be healing for a ton of HP. You do not need to worry about not healing enough. Every shot will heal you to full pretty much. So that's why we, kind of focus the way we're focusing. Now, cooldown reduction, you can never get enough of. So you'll see on every piece here, cooldown, cooldown, cooldown. And here, I realized I have way too much skill life leech, so I'd probably actually trade out 1 more for status power, because, might as well do more damage with toxic and have longer freezes. We don't need that much skill life leech, as I said before, so it's possible to start switching it out when you have enough pieces that have it. But the cooldown reduction, you can't get enough of it. Having that almost 100% uptime on Scrapnel and having the additional time that's easy to throw on the bladed turret, it's unbeatable. So that's why we do it the way we do it here. Now let's go through the mods. Toxic lead, since we're meleeing people and it's applying toxic because we spec'd into it, we will now actually reload our minigun through that. And the good part about Grim Inventor's Mask, it comes with upgraded gun, 30% resistance piercing with the minigun. It's just a really easy piece to acquire. And by easy piece to acquire, I mean you don't have to search through 1,000 epics to find it. Yeah, maybe getting lucky enough to get the Grim Inventor's Mask is one thing, but I think that it's still a very good piece. It's easy to use, and it has everything that we want. Moving on, we have Bang for Your Buck and Massacre. We'll go over Massacre first. Absolutely required. 38,000 anomaly power every kill, stacking 6 times. This is going to be the bulk of your damage increase, because it increases the base damage that you're doing. And once you increase the base damage of what you're doing, and then you apply your vulnerability and your toxic and your freeze, well, when that's done with euthanizer, shatter, and radical therapy, suddenly our damage is going through the roof. And that's why we're really needing Massacre, because without that, we're kind of stuck at doing 50k damage, but with Massacre, we're pushing 150, especially when coupled with Captain Hunter. So that's why Massacre is so good. Bang for Your Buck is not really required. It just really helps with the toxic lead reloads. Instead of getting 64 bullets, you get 128. Sometimes you'll drop it, you'll drop your Tool of Destruction ability, but I find when you're using Bang for Your Buck, it never drops. There's always enough things to kill you, always have enough bullets. So it's more of just a just in case kind of mod, but I like to keep it. Here, Euthanizer, 25% damage, and of course you see again, skill life leech, cooldown, anomaly power, the 3 big ones. And you don't really need more damage with Scrapnel perk, but there's not too many other things that are going to help you there. Maybe the tier 2 freeze mod is good, but not maybe it's good, it is good, but you don't really need it. This build works great without it. Moving on, Shatter, taking the 25% tier 3 mod for freeze, and mitigation from death. Now you can swap out mitigation from death for anything. There's a minigun mod that gives you 190k armor, which is fantastic. There's also another mod that gives you damage absorber, 50k armor, and 10% resistance. There's a lot of options, but what's really interesting with mitigation from death is it works with the minigun, and that's what I really wanted to prove here, which is why I have it on this, and plus it's a good piece anyways. Here, Captain Hunter, radical therapy. As stated before, just multiplying the damage, extra huge damage. Captain Hunter's always good, so we always take it because elites are obviously going to be the hardest thing for us to kill, and radical therapy, well, we're applying toxic all the time, so it's just a really good mod to have. Now, with all that being said, we're going to jump into the gameplay, and we're going to talk about how this build actually works. So, as you can see, we're walking in to Paxian Homestead. Now, normally, nobody enjoys Paxian Homestead, but when you're running Tool of Destruction minigun, you don't need to worry what other people like and don't like. As you can see, I run right in. This is going to be a huge thing that you're going to learn while you're doing this. You see, I just start, going at them. It doesn't matter. I don't care about the damage I'm taking. You don't recoil from things, but you see I run right into them. The thing about tool destruction is that it is so unbelievably slow. It is the only drawback of tool destruction is how slow you walk. You are a tank. You cannot be killed. You cannot be stopped. And as you see, I'm just ripping through them. We're already at 100k damage. I'm pretty sure we're at max massacre stacks, but we're not fighting any elites, and we are absolutely destroying everybody. Now, we don't do as much damage as you can see there when somebody isn't afflicted with toxic and everything, but there we're hitting 165 on that crawler. The damage is great, and the timing to kill was actually not bad. This was about 15 seconds behind my speedrun builds, but overall, the chance of me dying is 0. This is a tier 15, and it's Paxian Homestead. Not expected to be super quick, but I felt pretty strong on it. The issue though, like I was kind of saying, you're slow. You just kind of have to take it. Yeah, not even a broodmother can knock you back or throw you down, but you're so slow, it's hard to get from point A to point B. So I kind of like to situate myself in the right spot to begin with, and then move from there. And here you see I'm not throwing Scrapnel anywhere near as much as I need to be, or throwing Blighted Turret. I kind of was like, oh, you know, I'll kill it when I kill it. And that's kind of the nice thing. I could have gone faster here, but, you know, I was having fun. You're using the minigun, you're blasting things, you're killing the Scythans. There's nothing better than killing the Scythans, you know. How many times they've killed me with a one-shot, and then for me to just stand there and take their shot as I just rip through them. Like, I don't care if damage mitigation got fixed or not. I'm never going to die using this build. It's impossible for me to ever go down. And as you can see, I have the armor perk right now. That's just the, the mitigation from death. Working right there, 45k, stacking up 3 times. I'm pretty much indestructible in terms of my armor. Just going through, this is sped up here because, as I said, it takes a long time to kill things. And don't worry, I really turned down the sound so it didn't burn out our eardrums. But the one thing that kind of sucks about this build is it's not for every single place. You'd think, oh, Boomtown has so many people, so many things to kill, and they're all so compact, it'll be so great. And you'd kind of be wrong. Boomtown is very long. You have to walk from point A to point B. Imagine doing that with this build. It takes forever. So unfortunately, there's only some, CT15s that you can do in a really, really good time. Like, you're gonna gold pretty much every single one with this build just because of the sheer power. But the only thing that's gonna slow down is your literal walking speed. You just can't walk fast enough, and that's a serious issue when it comes to this build. But as you can see, it's really fun, it's really easy to do, and applying my toxic with my melee and making sure that I keep toxic lead going so that I have infinite bullets on my minigun is not difficult. And I think that was really important for me to see and to show you guys, is that it is very easy to do. There used to be something where you could hold out your Scrapnel or Blighted Turret, and you actually saw I tried to do it a couple times there. It doesn't really work anymore. You maybe increase your movement speed by like a factor of 0.5, but it's just not enough. You're still extremely slow. And so here I just kind of keep going, keep on killing them. But the one thing I really liked about this build and why I showed on Paxian Homestead specifically is, first off, yeah, like I said, you don't have to walk very far. It's a very short route. Everybody comes right to you. I just sit around this little area and go through it. But the boss is actually quite difficult. And if you've ever watched my live streams, you know I hate the Paxian Homestead boss. I hate it. But with this build, it's pretty easy. I just stand there. He tries to, come deliver the damage to me, and I just stand there and keep shooting him. I even freeze him, I melee him. It doesn't matter. I just do a ton of damage, and it makes me pretty much indestructible. It just is very strong. There you saw how annoying it can be. Me trying to find those last 2 people and just not being able to lock them down was extremely annoying because they just don't peek out. My bullets aren't succinct enough, and it's just really annoying. Now here, I actually make a critical mistake. You see that I'm doing only 11,000 damage? I realized right away, damn, I forgot to switch my weapons back. I switched my weapons to drop my minigun and then didn't switch them back. So I know right here that I'm actually not doing that much damage, and that I'm actually at one point going to have to switch my minigun back to make sure that I effectively handle what I was trying to do. And so when we get to that point where I have to switch it back, you're going to see that there's a lull, and that's why I kind of just speed it up at that point, just because there's no real need. But with that even being said, my damage wasn't terrible. It's just the rapid fire of it all. Like, it's just so much damage so quickly, and it is quite impressive, and it's fun to do. Honestly, I think that's the biggest part. Sometimes people just kind of lose track of it all, and that it's just not as fun as it used to be. But for me, doing this build is really, really fun, and I don't have that many drawbacks. Yeah, it's a little bit slower than my sweaty speedrun build, but it's not that bad. And here you're going to see where it speeds up. And that was done just to make sure you guys didn't have to watch too much of me sprinting around doing nothing as I wait for my cooldown to come up. But this is actually a really pivotal point right here. I go in, you know, tool of destruction, and the monstrosities of these behemoths just walk forward, and I'm just really not bothered. Now, although I am slow and I don't even have, you know, my masker stacked up, which is unfortunate because I do love when it's stacked up, it just still isn't that big of a deal. I start stacking it on the side, I clear the enemies pretty quickly, and then suddenly I'm blasting the guy for, you know, 100,000 damage every shot, and I'm doing like 100 shots a second, it feels like, and then I just start blasting them. Even there you saw that there's 500k for the melee, 1.4k for the scrapnel. The numbers are huge, and honestly the only drawback is the fact that you walk around so damn slow. And if there was a change to that, and they made it so that you walk around, or you can possibly sprint with the minigun on, you would see this build used so much more often, just because of the sheer strength and inability to die. And you know, that's why I just really wanted to showcase this build. It's really good. I really enjoy it, and there's just a lot of other things to it. Now, is there other portions of this build? Can you make it work with the RPG? I've tried a few times. The RPG does great damage. It really does. You can really kill a lot of groups of mobs and make sure that you're, you know, doing big amounts of initial damage. The issue is the cooldown is the same for the minigun and the RPG, and it was intended that, you know, you don't keep the minigun on forever, I believe, so that makes sense. But it doesn't really help you when you're trying to clear big expeditions like this. If you had, you know, big groups of enemies and you had a 30-second downtime in between each one, sure, you could use the RPG. But because that's not the case, it makes it very, very difficult. And here you see this guy didn't want to go frozen, so had to do what I had to do. And this is one of those times when I really like bang for your buck. You can see that I'm actually under 160 bullets right now, so I would have actually not been able to reload. I would have screwed it here. But because I'm actually able to keep going, I know that I have time to get one of these Scythans and increase my bullets by 128 or so, and jump right back up into being able to kill whoever I need to kill. And it made it a lot easier for me. And as I was saying before, bang for your buck, not required, but I like it for this exact reason. I'm almost guaranteeing I'm not going to run out of bullets, and I really enjoy that part. There's no chance I drop my minigun and really screw the run. So that's Paxine Homestead. I'm going to let you guys watch the end. Got a pretty good item. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like it. Feel free to subscribe, and if you feel like you have an update to this build that could be even stronger, feel free to drop it in the comments. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.
Whatever you can recover from that pod, we'll use it to honor those poor lost souls.
Outrider detected. Access granted.